Good morning. Good morning. How are we doing?
Good morning. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah, not here, Linda. Not here in New England. I know you're enjoying yourself down there in Florida. We have got a mess up here. So I hope everybody is somewhere safe and staying warm. But yeah, we've our roads are a mess. But we are going to have a couple of guests on this morning. And I'm just trying to check and make sure they were able to get on. I am seeing one, and maybe we are having some technical difficulties with the other. So I am going to introduce Katie Sheehan from Chris Law. So as I told you guys, we are trying to really make sure that. Let me bring Katie up on the screen. Um, we're trying to make sure that we're bringing you guys guests. We're bringing you stuff that you can ask questions about, and we're trying to get some themes around these shows so that you kind of know what's coming. So the other guest that I'm hoping to pull into the meeting today is a home inspection company. Um, but since we got Katie with us, Katie, just make sure that you are unmuted, and let's just kind of carry over the conversation that we were having before the call started regarding the properties not closing on time. Because we talked about this a little bit on Tuesday when we had the other Kate on. And we threw some terms around use and occupancy and hold harmless and stuff like that, but we didn't really get into the details. So I'm hoping that you could maybe talk through a few scenarios. I know you had a couple of hiccups this week, so talk through a couple of scenarios that you've seen with stuff not closing on time. Why is it not closing on time? And then maybe what are some of the strategies, both upfront and at the time that these things are happening, that agents can put in place to kind of save themselves and their clients a little bit.
Sure. So nice to meet you guys. Hope everyone's having a good morning and staying warm. So I guess we'll start out. It sounds like you've already had a pretty good primer on what happens when, we don't get to record and it's not going to close that day. Obviously, both parties are going to have to agree if we're going to do any of the following steps, which would be, a use on occupancy or a hold harmless. But I'm going to go over them a little bit more in detail so that you have a better idea of what they mean and what they mean for your client. So if we get into a use and occupancy, it's exactly what it sounds like. It allows for the use and for the occupancy of the property. So use is going to be putting in your items, keeping all of your luggage in there, moving things in. Are you able to put things on the walls? Are you able to just put stuff in the garage? That's going to contain the use. Occupancy is that you're able to sleep over. Your client is able to remain in that home for the evening when they have not officially closed on the property yet. Again, this needs to be agreed to by all parties because this is taking on a liability on both sides because the seller is now saying, this is my property that you have not bought yet, but I'm going to let you move into it. And if anything happens to you, even though you're signing this waiver saying that you agree to hold me harmless, if something bad happens, you could come after me. Or what if, they light a candle and they burn the place down? Obviously, those are major liabilities that we want to make sure that we're taking care of. So we try not to do these unless we absolutely have to. But the use and occupancy would be signed by both parties. It allows for the occupant to remain in the property under the limited terms. So they can't, usually it's going to say things like you can't take down walls, you can't put anything up on the walls, no putting holes in the property. You're not allowed to change the plumbing or do any repairs until it's actually on record and we're closed. As far as the use, like I said, it can limit it to just saying you can use parts of the property to store items or that you can use the entire property. You can go ahead and start moving in, just don't start tearing the walls down and making major changes that are not going to be able to be repaired. Those are the types of things that are going to be any use in occupancy. A hold harmless is specific to the use of the property. Hold harmless is essentially saying you're not going to occupy the property at all, but you are going to store some items there and they're going to let you know where to store them. And you're agreeing to store them in those areas without overstepping the bounds of the document. So if it says garage only, you're going garage only. If it says basement only, staying in the basement. If they say you have to be out by 5 o'clock so that you're not remaining in the property, you will be out by 5 o'clock. Those are the things that you're agreeing to in a hold harmless. That being said, the ways that you can really protect yourself, the reasons I see these things come up, they're on both sides. It's going to be, a seller issue if they haven't prepared the correct documents for recording, if they haven't brought everything to us that we need that's going to get to record. On the buyer side, it could be a funding issue. If the lender needs funding authorization and we don't close until the middle of the day and it takes them 4 hours to review their funding docs, we're not going to have funding authorization to get to record in a timely manner before 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it can be on both sides. Those are the most of the time, those are the reasons that I see come up. Either the seller has missed a document that's required for recording, or that the buyer is missing their funding authorization piece. Sometimes it's just a matter of the lender's just not ready. We get to closing and everything's good. We just don't have the clear to close, which is, especially for Chris Law on our end, that's why we tend to not schedule until we have the clear to close from the lender telling us that we're ready to go. So we try to avoid that entirely by not scheduling until we know that it's going to happen because the lender has approved. Those would be the main reasons that I see that it comes up. As far as protecting yourself, I'm sure Kate went over this before on Tuesday. Setting expectations is the biggest thing you can do, because if it's something that you are completely unprepared for, if your client had no idea that there was a chance this might not get to record today, then they're not going to have ideas, or they're not going to have an expectation that they need to have a backup plan or something in place. And it always will come up. Something is going to happen where a client comes up and, they knew that there was a chance we wouldn't get to record today, but man, they were really hoping for it. And it just sometimes doesn't happen that way, and we all hate that. We never want to see that happen. And we do our best. We try to make sure that we can get everybody in when they want to get in, but it does happen. And when that comes up, then we need to start, relying on your attorneys to go back and forth and get use and occupancy agreements, get hold harmless agreements, and just get as much as we can either into the property or get your belongings stored in the property. And then before you have to go find a hotel or stay with a loved one. Has anyone else run into this week, or?
Well, let's just talk about some of the reasons that you're seeing deals get delayed. And is there anything that agents can be doing to make sure that these things get to the closing table? Obviously, I don't want to throw the lenders under the bus, but I think a lot of times it's just, hey, the financing's not in place. We need a couple more days, right? But what are some of the other things? I know title issues can come up, and those can be frustrating because it's like, we had 30 days to work on this. Why is the title issue coming up the week before? So maybe talk about the title issues, and then maybe talk about some other things that you see that can delay a deal that agents should just be weary of and trying to get ahead of.
Sure. I would say the number one thing that I see delay things, maybe not quite to the point of not getting to record that day, but delayed on the day of closing, are going to be walkthrough issues. If you get to your walkthrough, and I've had nightmare walkthroughs where people got there and, there had been chickens on the property and it snowed the night before, and the sellers put the chickens inside the house before the walkthrough and trying to get back through, and that thing needed some real professional cleaning, and it was not, things like that. But you're going to have a client walk in, and if there's some major, structural issues that you didn't see when you first put in your offer or when you were viewing the property, and now it comes up and they've now moved the couch, the couch was in the way during the inspection. Now they've moved the couch and they've emptied the property, and there's a giant gaping hole in the living room. That's going to have to be dealt with. And we're not going to close until we know who is going to repair that wall. And we want to make sure that the sellers are getting that taken care of. And, hopefully you didn't waive inspections, and, it's something that you have not taken on yourself with your client. But those are the types of things. So walkthrough issues are a big one that will slow things down on the day of closing. Title issues right now. So recently, the registry has agreed that we don't need a certificate of good standing. We don't need to record a new certificate of good standing if the LLCs or incorporates or any of what we're closing, if you're closing in an entity, if they have a certificate of good standing or are in good standing with the Secretary of State. So we don't require that anymore if you're going forward for recording. Land court still does. So a lot of times what we're seeing, I've actually had 3 or 4 deals come up recently where the attorney was aware that the registry had said, we don't need a certificate of good standing anymore as long as you're in good standing. But these were land court deals. And when we got to recording, land court was like, we're not recording without a certificate of good standing. And those take, if you're in good standing, they'll take 24 hours for you to get. So that, puts things back, and that will delay people. So that's just something to be aware of if you are selling with an entity on the opposite side. If it's land court, you do still need a certificate of good standing. They do still require it in order to record. The rest of the registry has bypassed that and said it's not necessary. Title issues that come up.
Kate, let me just stop you there. We had somebody throw in, can we get some clarification on when does land court come into play? How do I know? Do I know at
Yep.
the beginning of a transaction that land court's involved in this deal? Like, how do I know? Just trying to prepare these letters of good standing early if necessary.
Sure. So the registry is when you look at a document and it's recorded in a book and page. That's just registry of deeds. It's recorded with a book and page number. You're good to go. Land court is a higher level of scrutiny. It means that at some point during the title of this property, its title has been brought into question and it needs to go to land court to clear some title issue or to get some issue cleared up, which means it now remains with the land court, and they are going to put it under a heightened level of scrutiny because whatever it was that they needed to clear, either it needs to be continuously upkept, it needs to be reviewed, whatever the case may be, it remains with land court. So you'll know the difference up front. If your property has a book and page number, you're in registered land, you're in recorded land. If you have a certificate or a document number, you're in land court. So when that comes up, that's when you know it's going to be a heightened level of scrutiny. We're still going to need a certificate of good standing. They're going to have heightened levels, meaning they're also probably going to want to review the documents in advance. Your attorney should be able to let you know. Usually if I see that a property is going to be in land court, I will let the parties know that, because it's going to be more. It's going to be a little bit extra, and there are going to be more likely delays at the end, because once we get all of our seller documents, we now need to put these all together cohesively, get them over to land court for their review, sometimes in advance of the closing or sometimes right at closing. But I like to give them an idea that there is going to be a heightened sense of review coming up. So that's when you can tell the difference from the beginning, is if it's book and page versus a document or certificate number.
And then, so it sounds like pieces of land can get kind of stuck there, but if you can get everything cleared, it can come out of land court and just go back to a normal book and page?
So it will remain in land court. It will just remain in land court, and they will issue a new certificate number. So when you record a deed in regular registry of deeds, you get a new book and page for that new deed. And then you're going to follow that title chain down by following those book and page numbers. In land court, it's going to remain in land court. When you record the new deed, they're going to issue a new certificate number, and you're going to follow those certificate numbers down the line. And that's how you're going to check. On the bright side, if you have a property in land court, you can pretty much guarantee that there aren't going to be any title issues on the back title of that property, because land court has gone through and with a fine tooth comb, they've cleared it. So you have a property that's almost guaranteed to be more safe and secured as far as the title of the property. It is going to, but with that heightened level of scrutiny, it could take a little bit longer, and there's a possibility it might not get to record that same day if land court needs to take their time reviewing.
Cool. Any other questions for Kate on, the land court, use and occupancy, hold harmless? Anybody have any follow-ups? I think it was a pretty thorough review, Kate. Yeah.
I just want to say, great last name, Kate.
I like that. We she and stick together.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Any other just random legal questions while we've got Katie with us? Anything else not involving anything that she might have talked about? Hey, I got something weird going on, just didn't seem right, or that you had a question on? And if you don't know how to raise your hand, you can just unmute and jump in, or you can use the reactions section. That's how you can raise your hand. It's under reactions. All right, you might just be off the hook. And I do see that that John has joined us from Sherwood. So let's turn it over. John, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, all right.
I'm here with Todd Diston, who's our inspector manager.
Awesome, awesome. So maybe just
so if I can't handle the question, Todd will take care of it, right, Todd? All right.
I think that chuckle was a yes.
Sorry, unmute.
Inspections can be a scary venture for any agent, because you never know what you're going to find. So, we go into it from the standpoint of, we give you visual inspections. We really go in depth into what we do. But what I want to get at first is, what are some issues that you have out there that are causing you anxiety with deals closing or moving deals forward? Is there anything, Todd, and I can help you with?
So just kind of open forum. You
Yeah.
know, we've got a lead home inspector here. Anything that's just, hey, I had this happen on a deal, or maybe even you got something going on now. I know John's got a couple of topics kind of
I got a
primed up,
couple.
but yeah.
Yeah, I got
All
a
right,
couple
Adam,
topics.
you were first. Go ahead.
I guess one of the things I'm starting to see more and more is sewer inspections.
Yep.
So I guess, you know, if I think about a house that was built in the 1900s, or maybe for those in Florida, the 70s, 80s, you know, obviously this thing isn't going to be in great shape. So what is the expectation we need to be setting with the seller? Hey, they're going to do a sewer scope, and here's what they're probably going to come out with. And then what is the expectation with the buyer in terms of, hey, we're going to go scope a 1900s house? You know, like what should that conversation look like? Because I can't imagine any of these things are going to come out sparkling clean. So is there a level of, I'm assuming it's not a pass fail, right? So how does that conversation go? How should we prep our sellers, and how should we prep the buyers?
All right. I actually started the septic and sewer department at Sherwood, and 70% of the time you put in a sewer camera into the line, 70% of the time you're going to find root penetration, grease, breaks, collapses, a ton of different stuff, and you just don't, as a primary artery of that home, you do not want to have that not looked at, because that's a $10,000 to $15,000 repair. Whereas if you come in and you know what you're looking at with these sewer scopes, and we have 4 inspectors that do sewer scoping, they're hunters. So those cameras go out and they find situations that you never thought you'd find. So in my mind, and granted, I started the division, that's a critical thing to look at.
John,
And
what are we typically talking for that as an add-on? Because that's not part of my normal home inspection, right? What are we typically talking to do a sewer scope?
so a sewer scope with us is $475. And then based on I owned a plumbing company years ago, and so I can crank out an estimate within 10 minutes. But as a general rule, you're looking at $125 a foot. So you got a 10,000 foot line, that's a huge expense. So that's why you don't not want to look at. So, the first time we did a sewer scope, it was for a condo unit, and the owners just bought or were looking to buy it. And within 15 minutes, we realized that they had an offset at the foundation, which is common. So they got a $4,600 credit off of the deal, and the HOA took care of the expense. So
And just
it's critical to
clarify
look
for
at.
us what you mean by an offset.
So an offset is most of these older pipes, they're anywhere from 8 to 10 feet long, and they're gasketed. So it allows roots to come into those lines. And with those roots coming in the lines, it creates backups, it creates breakage in the lines, and it creates just a ton of havoc. But if you catch it early and you have me come in and assess things, or whomever, they can give you a good strategy as far as how to present that to the homeowner. So
Is there
not the homeowner, the buyer, excuse me.
right? And I'm just seeing some questions come up in the chat here.
Sure.
Are there any signs like that we should be doing this, or is your recommendation, hey, if it's older than X, I'd probably do this?
In my mind, I would look at it every time, because it's extremely valuable for you to do so. I, it's difficult. You can't really tell until you put a camera in the line. So I can tell from the basement if it's all iron pipe. I can tell you're gonna have problems with that line. If they've redone it in ABS or PVC in the basement, you still have that line, that main line from the foundation to the street, which is anywhere from cast iron, cement, or clay. So you don't really know what you're going to get, but you know, based on those being 10-foot, 8 and 10-foot sections, there's going to be issues with that line, especially over the extended period that you're talking about probably 1960 and beyond. I mean, you just want to look at these lines.
So
like anything
is,
else, like a
and
panel,
when
electrical
let's say we've
panel.
got some root penetration, obviously if we've got root penetration, that means we've got a crack, right? We've got somehow that it got in. So can we just grind the root out? Do you have to replace the pipe? Like, what are your thoughts there?
So the progressive steps are you find there's an issue, you snake it or jet it. And I recommend jetting because you can adjust the pressure. And then if those don't work, you can generally maintain it for a bit, but at a certain point you're gonna have to deal with it.
What's jetting? I've never heard that term. Are we going to force a high-speed water through there or something?
So you force, yes, with high pressure, typically like 2,500 PSI, and you can adjust the pressure so it can be low or high, depending on the condition of the pipe. And the jetter head has jets that push forward, push back, push sideways, and they scour the line. And based on the ability to reduce the pressure, you don't put as much stress on the line.
Margaret, I
Yeah.
see your hand up. Did you have a follow-up on this or just something completely separate?
It's on something separate.
Let's do it.
So mold, there was a few inspections I had, and all of a sudden there's mold in the rafters in the attic. Obviously, there's a treatment, but it just scares the buyer a lot. And oh, it's going to come back. Is it somewhere else? Any thoughts on how that well really works when you do treat mold? Obviously, it should have a remedy and be fixed. But from your experience, what have you seen out there? So we
I'll
are
let
kind
Todd
of
answer
more
that
prepared for it.
question. Todd, you got that?
Yes, the two different things. One is if you find it, yes, you want to take care of it, but the real issue is why is it there? And I try not to be an alarmist, so if it's in the attic, and increase the ventilation in the attic and stop the heat from going up. So the insulation and ventilation, at least here in the Northeast, is much better in the attic, and that will control the issue. Mitigating it, spraying it, that sort of thing is important, but the main thing is to stop the issue that's causing it. If it's in the basement, it's a dehumidification system that's necessary. But again, it's more important to treat the issue, the root problem, than the actual mold itself. That's an easy fix to take it out of the house, and the buyers can be comfortable, but they really want to make sure it doesn't reoccur. So we come back. So just make sure that the initial problem is handled.
Any situations, Todd, where you're like, hey, we've got mold and we just don't even know what's causing it? You're pretty much always able to figure out what the source is.
I would say about 90% of the time, you know the source. Sometimes it's tricky, cathedral ceilings, finished basements, you don't know where the moisture is coming from. And that's where it gets really tricky, because you can mitigate, you can do all you want, but then you start having to do some surgical removal of walls, and to try to find out where the moisture is coming from. But as a former contractor, I've done basements which had mold issues, and really to stop the issue, we just increased ventilation and put vents in behind the finished walls, and we took care of it. So I would say 90% of the time it's an easy fix. The rest of it is just a little bit of investigation.
Just had a follow-up I'm seeing here in the
Thanks,
chat. Does it matter when you're doing the sewer lines if they're dry or if there's been water running through them or?
Personally, I don't care either way when I do it, but you want to have some water flowing through there, not an extensive amount, just to drive the camera. I mean, it has nothing other, impact on aside from being able to get the camera longer down the line, farther down the line. So yes, water is beneficial, but it's not necessary.
I want to bring up one other point on the sewer scope. Not only an older house, but I always recommend it on a brand new house to make sure the sewer lines are connected, because it's brand new and you don't know if there's an issue. And any house that's been flipped, because I've run into many issues where the renovators have just put stuff down the sewer line, and you're not going to know there's a clog, or they put too much spackle down there or cement, and you're not going to know an issue until much later. So I always recommend flipped house, brand new house, and obviously an aged house.
Any other follow-ups on the sewer, the mold? We probably got time for one more just general question if you've got for the home inspectors.
I do have a quick trivia.
All right.
What are the top 3 things that are most often missed during a home inspection? You can just yell it out. That's fine. Top 3 things.
Top 3 things.
Sewer
What do you guys think?
Sewer lines.
No. It should be. Definitely should be. Anyone else?
Roof issues.
This is just in general. It's not sewer scoping.
No, she said roof, not roof issues.
Oh, so I thought you said roots. Roof.
Is that it? Is that in the top 3?
No.
No. Oh, I thought that was a good guess, Justin.
Starts with an E, ends with an L.
Electrical.
You got it. Okay, next one.
Well,
There's an
hold on. Let's clarify. What's getting missed on electrical? Because
just double taps and fried wire.
this is going to put us over. But didn't I see something? I don't know if it's in New England or something recently. A law got passed where you can't. I think it's Rhode Island. You can't take the cover off the electrical panel anymore unless you're a licensed electrician now.
A union licensed electrician. So it's pretty.
So what's the thought process behind this new law? Is just to.
Well, if you ask Dave, he would say, don't take this the wrong way, but it's the mafia in Rhode Island that's making it happen. So I don't know the validity of that, but
Yeah.
that's a new regulation.
It's just a new thing. Okay.
Also with FHA, they're requiring a 4-hour well flow test. But if it pops over 3 gallons per minute, then it fails, then it fails. So you stop the test right away. But so Connecticut just released that, and it's under appeal right now. But that's kind of where we find ourselves with well flows.
All right. So number 1, electrical issues. Who else has got a guess? We got 2 things left.
How about foundations?
Yes. Awesome. One more.
And John, let's just, let's get some clarification. What are we missing? Like, is it just, hey, we've got cracks in the foundation? Is it, you know, structural issues with foundations? Like,
It's mainly structural, and it's come out where at every inspection, the inspector has to offer CFSIC inspection, just to offer it. They don't have to do it, but they have to offer, just to cover that requirement. So we'll see a bit more on that coming out probably mid-March.
what is the
Massachusetts,
CFISC or whatever the acronym
it's the
there?
Crumbling Foundation
Oh, okay.
Insurance Program in Connecticut.
So
It's
they
not
have
in
to, they're
Massachusetts.
making it mandatory that you have to offer that. You don't necessarily, the buyer doesn't have to do it, but they're making it mandatory that the home inspector has to offer that inspection.
Strictly offered,
Okay.
yes.
I got a question for you. So
Sure.
if the basement's been redone, so there's, how would you check the foundation? I mean, that's hard to do. Or do you go
Yeah,
by
I'm gonna
the,
let Todd, why don't you answer that as far as a percentage standpoint? I was told there'd be no match, so.
So the regular foundation inspection, obviously it's visual. We're not digging up the foundation, but the CFCSI is an inspection looking for cracks. And there's all sorts of regulations that you have to see more than 50% of the foundation. The biggest thing with the inspection is to be in the queue for the foundation repair, should there be a repair in the future. If you don't have an inspection and you have an issue, you can't ask the state for help in the repair. So it's almost like an insurance policy. You do it now, you hope you don't need it in the future, but if you do, you're eligible. That's the biggest thing behind it. And whether you can see it or not, whether there's issues or not, that doesn't really matter today, but you have to be in the queue in order to be in the program later. That's the biggest thing behind the inspections.
are you taking the age of the home and the location and where the concrete came from, or is that part of the process?
No, it's strictly visual, and we have seen issues all over the state of Connecticut, even though they're focused in one area due to the quarry, but we have seen issues throughout the entire state. So it's no longer just this neighborhood that maybe got the concrete from this quarry. We've seen it as far as 2 hours away in the state from the quarry, and they just happen to send the trucks down there. So there is no real rhyme or reason anymore. But again, you need to get in the program in order to get the benefits.
It is moving aggressively into Massachusetts. There's a large condo complex up in the Northeast, and I think it's 120 units, and they just discovered it. So it's not necessarily where it's at. There's no more footprint. This is all over. So if you tell a client don't get this foundation inspection, you don't need it, that's a huge liability that you just opened yourself up to. So never tell a client, oh no, don't worry about it, it's not in that footprint. Well, yeah, don't open yourself up.
Is this part of your inspections, the foundation?
As a standard, yes, but the standard gives us insight into CFSIC potential issues. So that's a separate inspection based on the detail of it. And we're only allowed 4 CFSIC inspectors in our company, and we are maxed out. So we have ample capacity to deal with CFSIC.
And just to be clear, Todd, what did you say the percentage, if you're going to go with the crumbling foundation inspection, what percentage do you have to be able to see?
It depends on how you're rating the inspection, not to get too deep into it, but you can inspect a basement that's 100% finished and you can't see anything, you can still be in the program because it was inspected. Then they have different ratings, severity 1, 2, and 3, and but that doesn't really matter as long as you're in the program. So 10, 15 years from now, you see a crack. Oh, okay, now I need to get this inspected and tested. And if it's crumbling, I can have the state give us some money to have it replaced.
Okay. So just because I think this one's really important. So just for clarity, I'm looking, my buyer wants to buy a property. We want to do the crumbling foundation inspection. Entire basement is finished. We can ask you to do the inspection. You're not going to drill any holes. You're not going to ask for any sheetrock to come down. You're just going to do the best you can with what you have. You're going to fill out a report. We're going to get put into this program. And now my buyer is covered should something happen down the road.
Absolutely, that's 100% correct. And remember, any foundation that's after 1983 is eligible for this.
Okay.
That's a good baseline, the 1983 for the agents. So, you probably want to look at it if it's older, but at least 1983 and old and newer.
All right, we are well over. John, why don't you hit us with what that third thing that is the most missed item, and we'll wrap it up.
All right, basement. That's the clue. It's an acronym. 4 letters. First letter H.
Heating.
HVAC.
You got it, Susan. Well done.
All right.
Hey, we really appreciate being involved with this call. Thank you, Stephen, and everybody else.
Yeah, this was great. We're definitely going to have you guys on. I think we're scheduled to have you guys on at least weekly. And yeah, this is really good. I mean, there's so many different topics here. Appreciate you guys having 2 people as well. Katie from Chris Law, appreciate you coming on this morning. When we can have some professionals on that can answer these questions, it really makes for a better call. So we will wrap up like we always do. I'll let the agents know what training is available today. So we have got 3 different trainings. We've got the New Agent Starter Series, the Journey to Elite, and then the Real Agent Society. So take a training, learn something, come back and share it with us tomorrow. That's it. We'll finish up on Friday. And just a heads up for you guys, next week, Monday is a holiday. So we'll be off on Monday and we'll start next week on Tuesday. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Take care.